Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about an issue that's been bothering me amidst the Avowed discourse of the past few days. As many of you know, especially because of how Asmongold himself reacted to it, there have been some videos circling the internet comparing Avowed to Skyrim and even to Oblivion in terms of world details, physics, interactivity, and other elements which are tied to immersion. Aside from these videos, there's also discourse in regards to it on social media, a lot of it, pointing out similar things or showing clips of Avowed being shallow or just outright stupid with its total lack of detail, the dead NPCs, the lack of player agency and presence, and this discourse has been, what can I even say? We're gonna be showcasing some really weird takes in this video. Some people, and by people I mean fans and shills of Avowed or Xbox, are going off in all manner of directions not even trying to defend the game, but simply pretending like everything is okay and the criticism doesn't count. That's the thing that kinda gets me the most about it too. I haven't seen people pointing out glowing positives about the game, or viable arguments as to why the negative criticism is not applicable or relevant. In my previous video, in regards to Avowed, which was a mostly negative video, I pointed out more positives in regards to Avowed than I have seen any of these people do in the past few days. They're all online yapping in defense of this game, but they're being completely incapable of providing any reason for people to actually try the game out. Instead, all they're doing is trying to get people to stop listening to everyone criticizing the game. Instead of coming up with reasons to recommend Avowed, they're trying to come up with excuses to dismiss criticism against Avowed. It has been either a cope fest about how the numbers are totally fine and expected, or that the Game Pass is a true wealth of the game, stuff that I already discussed in my previous video, or it's been a cope fest about how these comparisons that people are making to decade-old games, or even to Outer Worlds itself, are unfair, unrealistic, and totally inconceivable, and apparently hold no water, which is what we're going to be talking about in this video. So put on your hazmat suits and prepare yourselves for some thick loads of copium. It goes without saying that these comparisons to Skyrim are fair, or at least it should go without saying, but the defense has been that these games have nothing to do with one another, or that Obsidian has never mentioned Skyrim and somehow that makes it okay, or that Avowed is just a different kind of game to which these comparisons don't apply, among other even weirder statements. We're gonna go through a few of them that I scooped up off of X in the past couple of days. The beautiful world of Avowed. I think people are weighed down by their expectations of Obsidian. I'm glad it doesn't have a crime system and stealing and or hit NPC and all that, cause it makes you enjoy the purity of this game. I'm liking combat now cause I've figured out parry.
Who the fuck wrote this, Joe? Did you write this?
I didn't write that. I didn't do shit. I didn't touch it.
What in the seven seas of fuck did I just read? People are weighed down by their expectations of Obsidian. There's so much wrong in this sentiment, and it's being echoed by everyone trying to excuse a lack of detail and features present in other older games. People should have certain expectations from Obsidian. They're not a tiny little studio anymore, working with small budgets and published by smaller companies. They're in the big leagues now, and considering that their previous game, developed with a smaller budget and published by private division, had more detail and features than Avowed, worked on while under Xbox Game Studios, then that means that they're going backwards, and people should be wondering what is going on rather than making excuses like this. You can do both, you know. You can enjoy whatever Avowed has to offer even if it's shallow, while also having a deep desire to not have the next game that Obsidian makes give into shallowness again. You can take your little pieces of enjoyment from whatever Avowed has to offer while acknowledging and criticizing its faults, instead of endlessly praising mediocrity, or coming up with bullshit like, oh, I'm glad there's missing features in this RPG, cause it makes you enjoy the purity of this game. What the fuck does that even mean? This is just pure cope, and it doesn't even work. Like, even if this was to be taken as a legitimate argument to excuse the inability to commit crimes and killing wildlife, that still leaves out all the other examples of lack of interactivity and detail in the world, or the brain dead dead NPCs. What will be the excuse there? It's good that these details are missing so that we can be more focused on the moment-to-moment gameplay. Oh, come on. Other people like this one here like to point out that criticism against the game is just cherry-picking. If you guys don't know, Synth Potato, like, I don't know him either, but just going from being on X in the past 2 to 3 months, every time I see him, he is defending a game that other channels are talking shit about. So you know it's bad if even someone like this is finding issues in Avowed. His reputation for defending games doesn't really matter though, because a lot of people still quote tweeted and responded to this post, and not all of them in good ways. The cherry picking or nitpicking argument is one of which I don't even understand how people are making. Like, at some point, you can only pick so many cherries that you're over encumbered and having to send them to your fucking stash. There's whole videos being made showing off the many embarrassing instances of shallowness in Avowed that games in this same genre and style of RPG have done better over a decade ago, one of which being Oblivion almost 2 decades ago. Calling something nitpicking or cherry picking only works if all you have in a massive game is a handful of little pointless criticisms that usually don't even impact your experience that much. That is not the case with Avowed. There's too many cherries, and the cherries are big as fuck. They're the biggest cherries. They're the biggest I've ever seen. I've never seen cherries this big. I walked in, I said, wow, look at these cherries. Look at these cherries. These are the biggest cherries. American cherries. We're gonna make cherries great again, folks. When the cherries are this big and they are literally impacting, like for example, all of your NPCs being nothing but cardboard cutouts, you can simply no longer use this argument. It just doesn't fit. It's no longer cherry picking or nitpicking. It's a big thing that needs addressing. Next up, we have this cherry pie over here. Xbox has confirmed that Avowed is not a high-budget AAA game, and yet it is a better game than extremely high-budget games like Spider-Man 2, 300 million, and Horizon Forbidden West, 250 million. This makes the games and the games industry rethink the high prices of making games. The price of making a video game is unreasonably inflated. So this Xbox shill here has a couple of good points. But mostly they're shit. Absolutely, the price of making games in the AAA space has been going nuts. Companies will act like Hollywood and pour in hundreds of millions of dollars into their games, and you can't even see where the money went into. Spider-Man 2 is a great example of this. The budget was $315 million, so much money that despite selling reasonably well, it only made $375 million, which results in a tiny profit. This is totally unfeasible for the industry. It's a massive display of incompetence. I never checked the budget for Forbidden West. If it is indeed around $250 million, it also comes across as too expensive. Not that the game is bad or short at all though. At least the game is pretty meaty. The world looks gorgeous. I had a great time exploring and trying to get the best weapons and armor for the most solid machine hunting build. Honestly, I would rather be playing it right now instead of playing Avowed. With Spider-Man 2 though, I had the platinum in a mere 23 hours of gameplay. It made me audibly go, is that it? Olha, tu já acabou. Paguei 70 euros por esta merda? But yeah, that aside, Avowed is not really a better game than either of these games. It doesn't stand out as something like that. It doesn't stand out as an example. It doesn't even stand out as an example of making anyone rethink anything. I mean, who the fuck is even playing this game in order to be rethinking anything at all? It peaked at 19,000 players. Maybe it'll make it to 20, I don't know, but this is a disgrace for God's sake. If there's ever an example to make the industry rethink anything, it would be something like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which was made with like 40 or 50 million bucks, offering a very big and detailed RPG experience with great visuals and even some really well-directed story cutscenes. But shill accounts like these exist solely for one thing, to engage in cringy-ass console war bullshit, so good luck actually getting some genuinely good examples to present an argument with. And also good luck sourcing whatever the hell that Xbox has confirmed that Avowed is not a high-budget AAA game. What fucking language is even that? that. They don't even use this language. This is just a shill getting bent out of shape that people are criticizing a AAA release from Xbox for being shallow and looking unfinished with these cardboard-ass NPCs standing around in place waving their arms without saying anything. You're not meant to pay attention to any of them, you're meant to speed past them, kind of like in Spider-Man, except unlike Spider-Man, this is an RPG where people are supposed to immerse themselves in the world they're meant to care for. You know, you're supposed to be the savior of this land, yet everything is just a lifeless cardboard backdrop. And that's not to mention the fact that taking into account Avowed after the acquisition versus Outer Worlds before the acquisition, becoming part of Team Xbox made them a worse studio. Then we got this guy over here also coping with a synth potato post. This is a silly take. You couldn't kill sprats in the Outer Worlds either. Lots of games don't allow you to kill non-hostile wildlife. Plus, part of the Avowed experience is that the Scourge is killing animals, so why do you want to kill animals? Followed by, actually you can kill sprats, I misremembered, apologies. Well, apologies accepted, however, it doesn't really matter anyway because the entire take is garbage. In the Outer Worlds you can kill anything including NPCs, including being able to steal from them, and the game punishes you with a crime system which will have the entire settlement after you and a loss of reputation with whatever faction rules that settlement. And this stuff is incredibly valuable in RPGs like this. It can't simply be brushed over like it's nothing. Features like these tie you into the game world and add to your personal roleplay experience. I don't know if you guys remember or not, but a big thing in Skyrim and Fallout circles was to chat with your friends about your adventures and having different stories to tell in regards to how you got a certain quest or what choices you made in certain parts of the story or how you got a certain item or what you focused on, etc., as opposed to your friends who could all have a different story while playing the same game. This was also a thing with Elden Ring. The Outer Worlds wasn't as deep or as wide as to provide a lot of this, but it was enough that you had the freedom to do some interesting things. For example, in the Groundbreaker, you can do a lot of looting in the vault of the motel/inn sort of place where people can rent rooms at. You can also score a damn powerful sniper rifle from the gun store in the promenade, if you can figure out a way to steal it from the shop without being seen. And you can also go into the security place with the device that the scientist gives you, that thing that creates a sort of holographic disguise for you, and you can score a plasma rifle pretty early on as well, along with some other valuables. This is fantastic for providing players with things to do outside of what the game is telling them to do, instead of it just being the game telling you to go here and do that or go over there and kill this dude or whatever. You are going out of your way and thinking for yourself, I'm going to rob that store. And if your game is really good at what it does, like for example, the Outer Worlds is not very deep, so there really isn't like a night and day system, for example, in the promenade, but in Skyrim, again, valid example, you do have that option of thinking, you know what, I'm going to wait until nighttime and I'm going to try it out at night. And of course at night there are other complications. The doors are usually locked by lockpicks and you have to be able to open them, and if you're not good at lockpicking then you're shit out of luck. If you're not good at sneaking, the guy's going to wake up and he's going to kick you out of his store, you know, etc. The point is that you have this living, breathing world with these several different elements that are physical. They are physical within the world and they are interactable by the player, and you can actively make choices to engage with these things freely in a criminal way or in a non-criminal way, wherever the hell you choose. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's there and people can engage with it. If you as a developer can find a way to make players engage with your world without you having to put down any markers to go anywhere or to do any specific thing, and then people do that thing and they are able to do it, you are winning. The silly take here is to diminish or disregard all of this and just say, oh, who cares about a crime system, or who cares about a reputation system, or oh, this is all cherry picking. Also, it doesn't matter what the plot of Avowed is. The plot of the Outer Worlds is about saving all of your fellow colonists frozen in the colony ship, most of which are geniuses and masters of their field. They are the only people capable of saving Halcyon, you know, the little solar system, from resource exhaustion being brought on by the board of directors. And yet, in Obsidian fashion, you're still allowed to choose to side with the bad guys or to just be a total madman. You can even crash the very ship that you're tasked with saving people from into the fucking sun. Newsflash, people, it's an RPG. More than that, it's an Obsidian RPG. People didn't get these, expectations from their ass. They got these expectations from Obsidian's previous games. And even if you can't go as far as to let the player have the choice to do a full 180, like if you don't have the resources to make a game in which you can flip a switch and be an evilman who goes against the very plot, which is totally understandable, then you can at least do what Skyrim and Oblivion do, where you're still a hero, you're still a dragonborn who will save the world from Alduin the World Eater, or you're still the champion who will save Tamriel from Mehrunes Dagon and the jaws of Oblivion, but you're still your own character with your own quirks, interacting with the world as you see fit, capable of being some kind of anti-hero, for example, or being someone with a double life, a savior during the day but a killer or an opportunist of questionable morals at night, dealing with the consequences of your criminal behavior and reputation as you go. These are not mutually exclusive, and these intricate systems to allow players to freely interact with the world should never be taken out for such weak, pathetic excuses. I'm gonna give you guys another example. Some of you may think it's stupid, but I don't care. Here it goes. In GTA games, I like to drive in accordance to the law. Obviously, if I'm doing a mission and we have to go fast, then we have to go fast. If I'm doing a race, I don't care. But every now and then, whenever I'm cruising around the city or whatever, I like to drive with accordance with the law. I like to stop at red lights and I like to go at green lights and I like to stick to my lane. And when I stop somewhere because of like going into a clothing store or a gun store, I like to park my car correctly.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Now, just because we're playing as criminals, does this mean that Rockstar should just remove all of these systems? All of this hard programming that they did to put in traffic lights and traffic signs, and then the AI programming to make the pedestrians stop at these red lights and go at these green lights? Should Rockstar just get rid of all of these little systems just because GTA is a game where you play as a criminal and there's absolutely no point in following the rules of traffic? Of course not. These elements should still be in the world and the player should be able to freely interact with them as they see fit. I do not believe in excusing this at all, or with saying something like maybe you should realize that it's not that type of game, there's no hunting mechanic, incentive to kill uninfected wildlife, or quests surrounding it at all. It's a fantasy RPG where you're fighting bandits and rogue factions. You are looking for something that isn't there. We can't just excuse the embarrassing shallowness of the world of Avowed by saying that it's not that kind of game. It is that kind of game, and people are demonstrating embarrassing levels of copium in defense of this fucking game, and I don't get it. By all means, praise the game, praise what it does well, go for it, I don't care. Sing the praises of the lore, appreciate the fact that we do at least have some options in the portrayal of our character through dialogue. Praise the system of having the background information for your character and it actually getting acknowledged throughout the story and other interactions.
I got to be dreaming. Oh gods, am I dead?
The kid's in bad shape, but he's not too far gone.
I'm not ready. I've never even touched a girl. It's not fair.
Not with that. No, oh, you mean healing him.
Praise the verticality and freedom of movement. Praise the list of skills and abilities to spec into. Go for that, but what the fuck is this with looking at a dead fucking NPC littering the streets, looking worse than what you'd find in the very worst of Ubisoft's games, and then going, oh, it's fine though, you're just looking for stuff that isn't there, or you're cherry picking, or this is not necessary, it is better for purity. Like honestly, what the hell is going on with this game and the people defending it? Jesus. The boring, bland, dead and uninspiring ass world of Avowed, plus the lack of interaction with everything in it that isn't a hostile NPC, makes or a shopkeeper, makes Assassin's Creed Shadows look like game of the century. Next up, we're going to talk about the comparisons to Skyrim and what the fuck is going on with people dropping posts like these. Random gamers. OMG, Avowed isn't like Skyrim. Obsidian for 3 years. Avowed is not like Skyrim. Why does everyone feel compelled to compare Avowed to other games? Anyways, while they attention seek, Xboxers are playing Peak. Oh my god, the dude didn't even write Peak correctly. It's the wrong Peak, dude. This is a public service announcement. Avowed is not trying to be Skyrim. Not all RPGs set in a fantasy world need to be compared to Skyrim. Diddling ding dong. Oh my god, please like and subscribe so that I can afford antibiotics for after this video. Obsidian doesn't really have to mention Skyrim in order to have their game compared to it. This is just natural. If you make a racing game, your racing game will be compared to other similar racing games. I mean, sure, if you make Need for Speed Underground, for example, it's not going to get compared to Mario Kart, but it's definitely going to get compared to Midnight Club. First-person fantasy RPGs will have to contend with comparisons to Skyrim. It is what it is, just like similar games in a post-apocalyptic setting will be compared to Fallout. Hell, even Outer Worlds was compared to Fallout, and it's some sci-fi stuff in space. This is not only because it's a game made by Obsidian, a studio that inevitably has that connection because of having made New Vegas back in 2010, but also because of just the game itself. Like, I can't explain this any better. I can't make these people understand this. If you make a game in the same style, you will be compared. It is what it is. And Obsidian knows this too, like this isn't a surprise for anyone except for these shills. Even in the case of Outer Worlds, they deliberately advertised the game with a Fallout name in the trailers. They knew what they were doing. Doesn't matter if it's in space, they knew what they were doing. They knew the similarities were there. They could have mentioned from the creators of Pillars of Eternity or whatever, but they didn't. They put in from the creators of Fallout and the developers of Fallout New Vegas. And this is because it's painfully obvious for everyone that these games are alike. Outer Worlds, even though it's far from Fallout thematically and stylistically, was meant to scratch that same itch in the gameplay department. And the timing for the marketing was perfect too, because at that time, if you recall, Bethesda was busy feeding dog shit to Fallout fans in the form of Fallout 76. We had an RPG in first-person perspective. You create your own character, putting points into certain stats which are relevant to your starting playstyle. Regardless of that starting playstyle, you are free to use whatever weapons you want, whatever skills you want, and you are free to spec into whatever you want from that point forward. You got a lot of dialogue to go through with characters, you have skill-based speech checks, some light choices to make in how to approach situations, you have a living world caked with NPCs and quests to find or conversations to have. You can kill anything or anyone that you want, you can be good or evil, you can be a model citizen, you can be a douchebag, or you can even try your hand at stealing to get ahead. You have a reputation system and a wanted system, no matter how basic it is. Like, at the very least, if you get caught stealing or killing, you will lose reputation and you will be attacked by guards and people around you, etc. You get the point. It's a game that's meant to appeal to the fans of Fallout. Similarly, whether Obsidian wants to mention it by name or not, which in this case they had absolutely no reason to do so whatsoever, since they're not connected to the Elder Scrolls at all, Avowed was meant to appeal to fans of Skyrim, fans who have been sitting around with nothing to fucking play, except for Skyrim if they want to scratch that itch, for nearly 14 years now. Fans who are fully aware that it'll be a lot more years until Elder Scrolls 6 releases, and there is no guarantee whatsoever that it'll actually be good, since Bethesda isn't exactly inspiring much goodwill lately. Also, can we talk about how Skyrim is often trolled to hell and back? Being compared to Skyrim and falling short should not be something that happens casually. Being compared to Skyrim isn't like being compared to Witcher 3 or Baldur's Gate 3, which obviously pushed certain boundaries. It's not to say that Skyrim isn't an achievement, it is, but we all know that Skyrim isn't pushing boundaries when it comes to production value. We all know that the success of Skyrim has a little bit of a lucky element to it that cannot even be replicated. Or rather, it can be replicated, but it's very difficult. Let's just put it like this. If CD Projekt Red wants to replicate the success of Witcher 3, or Larian wants to replicate the success of Baldur's Gate 3, they can do it. Like, there's a certain template that they can follow. What makes these games so good is palpable and identifiable. It's not to say that it's easy to do it again, because it takes a lot of work, a lot of it, driven by pure passion. But with Skyrim, if you grab every single little element of it and you set it aside, so many of them are just so bad, but it's how it came together in the end that just made it work. Bit of a lightning in the bottle kind of situation. And this isn't coming from a hater. I am a big Skyrim fanboy with incalculable thousands of hours poured into it across 5 platforms. And even I can acknowledge how little in terms of roleplay depth this game offered from an RPG element standpoint. Like, we don't have skill checks, for example. It doesn't really matter if we specialize into one-handed or two-handed or magic, it's not going to be relevant outside of combat. While some guards will acknowledge our high levels by saying stuff like, "Don't go burning down any buildings," or "Hail conjurer, conjure me up a warm bed, will you? Hey, you mix potions, right? Can you brew me an ale?" etc., which I appreciate a lot. They even acknowledged faction-related stuff, or the clothes that you wear, or if you possess Daedric items in your inventory, or they even roast you if you hang around with an iron sword. Like, I love these details. They are details that kind of, they stop you. You're running around in this world, and they stop you and they tell you, hey, your actions in this world, your character is a physical thing in this world. You're not just running around from A to B like in a video game, you actually have presence in this world. And by doing that, you're automatically fleshing out your world as something alive. The lack of these details in various games that we play as the years go by is precisely why I value them so much. This is all stuff that we took for granted back then, but anyway, the point is, while I love these details, the game doesn't actually let you use your skills contextually in dialogue. Like, all you can do is persuade or intimidation, which are based on your speech skill and your character level. Skyrim was one of the first, if not the first, RPG that I've ever played. It was like my entry point to then go and play other more robust RPGs. I used to just play a lot of shooters and other mainstream stuff, so when I jumped into Fallout and I saw speech checks based on these other attributes, I always thought, oh man, why couldn't Skyrim have this as well to deepen the experience and add more replay value? Skyrim is also a game with goofy ass NPCs. I mean, come on, everybody knows Skyrim's NPCs are total fucking memes. The most advanced NPC in the game is Serana, and that's because when you had her as a follower, she used to just take off and like go sit down at a bench and start eating some fucking bread, or you know, cross your path. So sometimes you're having conversations and she's literally just moving around and even moving your character or the character that you're talking to, like sometimes even out of the scene itself, like the camera angles. Oh my god. Like I said, total fucking memes for NPCs. But this was considered the most advanced one because all of the other NPCs that you could have with you, all of the other followers, they would just stand there like golems staring at you and waiting for an input. Skyrim NPCs outside of that have some basic schedules. They sleep, they get up, they go to work. Some of them are programmed to go to the tavern at night or take a walk outside in the city. Some of them have joint triggers where they may start talking to each other if they're in proximity, and this stuff was not advanced at the time either because Oblivion already had it. Along with other things in regards to its gameplay, detail, and world interaction are not advanced either. So basically, the thing that I'm trying to get at is that even as a lover of Skyrim, this is an extremely dated game that is still playable today merely because it has this lightning in a bottle effect where its elements just come together really well and can provide one hell of a world to escape into and get lost in, filled with organic adventure for anyone who has the endurance to withstand very dated mechanics, some jank, some bugs, and really basic presentation. Like, this game doesn't even have a single cutscene. Every event in the story where the player is meant to witness something is happening in gameplay, which is why sometimes some bugs can be so hilarious as well as so devastating, as sometimes some quests don't even progress anymore. For example, I used to have this glitch happen to me all the goddamn time, where I couldn't progress through the Dawnguard DLC because the gate guy was stuck and wouldn't open the goddamn gate to let me enter the castle with Serana. Like, there's a lever that he had to pull, but he just wouldn't pull it. Eventually, I gave up trying to reinstall the game and trying to restart a playthrough, and I just started going through the fucking gate by crashing into it head first while holding a big plate in front of me, which is a method for clipping through walls in Skyrim. This is the goddamn Skyrim experience. If you, as a game developer in 2025, are being compared to Skyrim in the same style of game and you're coming up short while working for Xbox Game Studios, something is really wrong with your game. Skyrim. Jokes aside, fellas, if your game is being compared to Skyrim, now I'm actually being serious, and all you can do is come up with bullshit copium excuses that games shouldn't be compared to one another, you are seriously fucked here. Because in 2025, the basic level of mechanics, details, and features necessary to build the foundation of immersion in a first-person fantasy RPG should already be at the level of Skyrim by default, or at the very least, most of them, where people couldn't compare so many aspects of both of these games, from brain-dead NPCs to arrows sticking to any surface and then disappearing. This is the reality of this situation, and it's an embarrassment for Obsidian that Avowed can't do these things while advertising itself as an RPG. This level of shallowness is expected from online live service games, not from single-player RPGs. Furthermore, this copium-ass way of phrasing this is so annoying. Avowed is not trying to be Skyrim. Not all RPGs set in a fantasy world need to be compared to Skyrim. Holy strawman shit, Batman. Not all fantasy RPGs are compared to Skyrim, like not even close. You don't see people comparing Witcher, Dragon Age, or Baldur's Gate 3 to Skyrim unless specifically mentioning some elements in regards to it. For example, in my Veilguard review, I mentioned how terrible the funeral scene was in the Lucanus storyline and compared it to the funeral of Godlike Whitemane in Skyrim's companion's questline. And I did this to show the mediocrity in Veilguard. I did it to show that if your BioWare style RPG, a style of RPG known for having directed cutscenes with various dialogues to engage with, can't direct a goddamn funeral better than Skyrim, a game that has no cutscenes whatsoever and NPCs just fucking stand in place, then you are fucked, my brother. But in general, of course not. These are totally different styles of fantasy RPG. The games play very differently and have different strengths. In Skyrim, exploration is far more important than in Witcher, for example. The way I engage with the world exploring from place to place is very different with how I merely traveled by horse to question marks on my map in The Witcher 3. Lines are drawn between Avowed and Skyrim because they are the same style of RPG. While not every single thing present in Skyrim should be present in Avowed, and vice versa, the bare minimum stuff, like the stuff that the Outer Worlds already had in its foundation, absolutely should. Otherwise, it comes off as an unfinished, shallow game representing a studio's regression instead of the creation of a new style of RPG. This excuse is kind of looking at Cyberpunk 2077 at launch and coping that the missing features, stupid-ass repeated NPCs, random crap popping into and out of view, broken police system, etc. were all just their own style of game. So if you don't like it, just don't say anything at all, okay, hater? Listen, hater, why don't you stop hating and go play some video games? CD Projekt Red is simply trying to create their own brand of RPG with Cyberpunk 2077, one where half of the shit is broken, functioning uniquely. If this kind of discourse ruled over CD Projekt Red at the time, where shills would be crawling out of the woodwork to pamper them and defend the indefensible, then we would have never gotten the game fixed, we would have never gotten the missing features added in, we never would have gotten an overhaul of the system with new abilities and mechanics, and we never would have gotten Phantom Liberty. Instead, the game would have remained as it was, a clearly unfinished, dull action RPG whose well-written and well-designed quests and characters were mired by an overall disappointing and immersion-breaking game. Avowed's shills are ensuring that Obsidian never grows. They're ensuring that the clear mistakes and laziness on display are not treated as such, so that hopefully they can be fixed and overhauled into what could be a much better RPG in the future. Like through patches and updates or something. Or at the very least, that they are seriously addressed in time for their next game, The Outer Worlds 2, before that also turns into a weak, shallow slop where the RP in RPG is ripped out and all we're left with is a lowercase g at best. Listen, there's no need to pay any mind to comparisons like these from Hip Hop Gamer or Hot 97 or Plitch or The Goat or whichever the fuck his actual name is here. I don't know. Comparing a bear fight from an action game to a bear fight in an RPG and calling it uninspired. Obviously this is stupid and nonsensical, yes, this is actually something that is compared in bad faith, something that doesn't match, something that cannot be taken any more seriously than comparing how cars look and drive in, GTA San Andreas versus Forza Horizon 5. but comparisons to Skyrim and Oblivion are fair game. Skyrim and Oblivion players are literally the target audience for something like Avowed, and if you actively neglect them and their feedback, you are automatically turning away your very own paying customers, like your actual target of paying customers who are lining up to shell out $60 for a game that is supposed to be right up their alley and to tie them over for a bit while they wait for more games in the same style. There is an obvious overlap between fans of Obsidian and Bethesda because of games like these, but they're not going to give you their money if you can't meet the bare minimum of expectations for this kind of genre. They might give you their money on a sale, they might even give you their money via Game Pass just to try the game out, but we both know that that's not enough. We both know that as a game studio you need sales, and we know that Xbox needs concurrent subscribers. Substandard quality games are not going to get anyone anything. Instead of spending time ignoring the people actually bringing up valuable feedback in trade for morons who can't even make a single argument in defense and recommendation of Avowed, maybe they should be paying attention to the former to ensure a better future for their studio, one where their games are actually wanted. Even a game like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 ends up getting compared because despite it being so different by doubling and even tripling down on realism elements and other meticulous details to the point where even if all you want to do is forge a sword or just repair it, you have to go through an entire ass minigame banging away at a sword or sharpening it in a wheel, not via a menu with the character doing the animation in the background, but by actually being in control of the action itself. The fact is that KCD2 still ends up somewhat appealing to Skyrim and Oblivion players, especially the ones that were forged in the jankiness of Bethesda's games and were now more than prepared to handle KCD's jank, so long as they were rewarded in the end with a game that lets them explore and interact with the world freely. For some, like myself, it worked out. It's something different, the combat is much less heroic and much more realistic to the point of annoyance. The exploration is not as loose and adventurous as you have to contend with hunger, fatigue, disease, etc., and just overall jankiness of movement that sometimes can even get you stuck in a fucking branch. In fact, I remember very vividly getting stuck on doorways on the day one version of the game. But of course, for others, it didn't really appeal to them. The differences were just too great. It's much less of a power fantasy and much more of a peasant struggle simulation, but it was okay because it didn't have to. Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 did enough to actually provide enough identifiers to become its own style of RPG, but Avowed is not doing that. It's just doing the most basic cookie-cutter structure possible and taking away depth, so the perception is not a new style of RPG doing its own thing, it's more like what happened with Ubisoft over the years, a lazy and utterly unnecessary standardization of a much better and rich system for building the quickest, simplest, basic fast food equivalent of an experience for a quick buck, instead of a lasting and marking experience that will endure for years to come, and that actually provides anything of meaning to the player. I mean, come on. And this is just sad to see. It's sad to see Obsidian going down this road. So many developers are just doing this now. They're letting go of mechanical depth and becoming complacent, and it's just sad. But anyway, that's about it from me on this one. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. If not, I appreciate any feedback either way. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you in the next video.